You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
I've never seen anyone die on camera before.
Alright, well.
Yeah, I mean, never mind what I feel, that his parents have had to see that time and time again. They saw it in court. They will live with that memory all of their lives. They have to live with that.
Because you created this atmosphere, not just the handcuffing officer, you, the government, Keir Starmer, every one of you brought in these policies that attack white people. That's what it is.
In the UK right now, you got a group of cops that let a young man die after being stabbed to death.
You should see that scumbag's brother, who should be charged for perverting the course of justice. He fucking lied.
So, the video has been released of Henry Nowak's murder. And what you see and what you witness, and what we've witnessed since the murder, since this has all come to light in the court case, in the media over the last week, is silence from Keir Starmer, silence from Angela Rayner, silence from Sadiq Khan, silence from everyone who wasn't silent about George Floyd. Now, I went this morning onto Hampshire Police's website to have a look, because we need to try and understand why a dying white boy had his hands tied behind his back, was handcuffed, even when he said, "I've been stabbed, get me an ambulance," multiple times, yeah? But it doesn't take long once you go onto the website of Hampshire Police, because you need to understand that this infection or this disease that's embodied in every single government institution, not just government institution, it's in the media. This anti-white racism, this woke mindset, it outraged me, what I read, and continued to read as I worked my way through the website. Introduction. The murder of George Floyd. This is on the national policing policy of our country in every police force. The murder of George Floyd by a serving police officer in USA in 2020 was a pivotal moment for policing in the UK. Really? Why? Driving the need for real change. Whilst this tragic event happened in another country, policing across the UK over many years has a strained relationship with some communities. Nationally, the Police Race Action Plan was created to address the racial disparities and distrust associated with policing, particularly for those in minority communities. Much has been done by policing to address racism in the police and society. Policing is more inclusive, more diverse, and more reflective of our communities. Do you know what that means? More inclusive and more diverse. It means the white boy's getting trampled on. That's what it means. It means the white boy is never the victim, right? The minute an accusation of racism is put in, it elevates up to here. So it didn't matter that he'd been stabbed. It doesn't matter. You've said some nasty words to someone that's not white. This elevates all the way up. Why does it elevate all the way up? You just have to look at their policing programme. You have to look. We will pursue, this is on the government and the police website, every police force. We will pursue offenders and deal with offences that cause the most harm to our ethnic minorities. What about the most harm to the public? What about us? We're a minority. In many towns and cities, we're a minority in London. We're a minority in many estates, many boroughs, many areas. It's this same diversity training aimed at white people when we're the minority. 30% of attacks in the country are on us, white people. The biggest rape epidemic in our country wasn't against ethnic minorities. It was by ethnic minorities against white people, white kids. Do you see any of that on the government's website? We hear so often from the police, we've learned. You've learned fuck all. You've learned nothing. You're still tying the hands behind the back of white boys while they've been stabbed and killed. Not because of the ignorance of the police officer, but because of your policy failures, your indoctrination within the system. It goes on, making sure that staff and officers are trained to recognise and deal with crimes that impact our ethnic minorities. What about the English? What about us? Address any disproportionality in our response for outcomes for victims from black and ethnic minorities. It's just website after website, page after page. Look at this. Behaviour which amounts to discrimination through unwitting prejudice. What? What are you taught? This is communism. This is communism embedded in our policing structure. There is the facts that they don't want to see, that no one wants to see. This is the statistics when I started going through them, that black people are overrepresented among both homicide and convicted homicide offenders relative to their share of the population. Understand what that means? Guess what? White people are underrepresented relative to their population. We're less likely to be racist murderers, less likely than the minorities. We're more likely to be the victims of these murders than the minorities. Now ask yourself this, will Henry Nowak have a museum named after him? Will his mother or father get a peerage? Will they get roads named after him, like Stephen Lawrence? No one's even mentioning their name. The New York Times haven't wrote one article. They wrote hundreds about George Floyd. This is the bias. You see what he's talking about there? There is. I used to think, if you look at working class education, you look in the schools at how successful white working class kids are. We're here, black, Chinese, Indian, they're up here. Yeah? They're succeeding because everything's aimed at them. And I used to think this disparity within education was down to neglect and us being forgotten. It's not. It's actually bloody targeted at us. We're being targeted by our own systems of institutional racism. After Stephen Lawrence had done an investigation for institutional racism in the police force, they've gone full the other way. Now they're racist against you if you're white. You've got no chance if you're white. Working class, white, straight, male, fucked. Fucked. And Henry would not, this is a fact, would not have had his hands tied behind his back if he wasn't white. That's it. And if you dig up my speeches, I have spoke about this for 20 years, more. I told a story when I was in Luton, start of the EDL, my cousin rang, said it's all kicking up on the estate with Muslims. So I flew up to the estate. The estate's called Farley Hill. We jumped in a taxi, got out of the car. There's Muslim men with bats and poles, and they're fighting English kids, white kids, who are 14 and 15. I stood and just watched as this fight was going on. The young kids were giving it a good go, but the adult men were beating them up with weapons. The Muslim men. The police come screeching in the road. These kids are victims of an assault and an attack with weapons. They jumped on the white kids. They jumped straight on them. I've seen this my whole life. And I remember saying, what are you doing? And as he's got the white boy on the floor while the Muslim's standing with a base bat, what do you want us to do? Their hands are literally tied behind their back, the police. We are victims. No one. We're the biggest victims of racism, white people. Our daughters are the biggest victims of racism, white girls. That's the fact. Why is that not on none of your websites? Policing unit, your future of policing for safety of the country. What about us? What about us? That's the problem here. Everything is targeted against us and protection of minorities. We're a fucking minority now. And none of those protections are given to us. Nothing is aimed at us. You can read, the stuff I was reading, 30.6% of white people are racially or religiously targeted with hate. Do you hear that? Well, when you go through the nationwide police programme, there's no focus, none, on anti-white racism. There's plenty of focus on blacks and Islamophobia. Plenty. What about us? What about us? It's like we don't matter. White kids don't matter. White children don't matter. Everything's aimed at every other minority, everyone else. And that can be seen in the visual optics of Henry bleeding out, dying out, while police say no and they ignore him because this brown person said he was a victim of racial words. That's it. Do you know this brown person? Do you know even once they found out he'd stabbed him 5 times, they still didn't handcuff him. He wasn't handcuffed to the police car. He wasn't handcuffed in the police car. He wasn't handcuffed at the police station. Why? This bullshit training is why. This bullshit discrimination, anti-white agenda is why. And it's embedded in our government, police, media, all of them. Every institution is embedded in, and diversity needs to be taken out. Every person in a position of power within, Donald Trump's been successful in doing it in the United States, whether this is going to bring about the change that's needed. Because change is needed for this institutional racism. It's needed. And this should be the turning point.